Hey y'alls, it's me again. It's Dr. E, this time here to help you out with Module 3. And this one's all about, what is it? Was it archaeological methods? Well, normally this would be a class that we would do like a lecture and a lab to go with it. And we would spend at least 8 weeks just going over all this stuff. But I'm going to try to do it in I don't know, 20 minutes. I'll try to stuff everything into this video. And of course, I can't stuff everything into it. So make sure to do your readings, right? There's no substitute for it. I'm going to go over some key concepts, ideas, general understandings that we kind of hold as true within the discipline of archaeology. So, our readings this week, two chapters, Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. Chapter 7 is all about dating techniques. And this is, fun stuff. So, I'm not going to waste a lot of time, but you should be able to understand the difference between cyclical types of time and linear time, right? Cyclical, good way to imagine it is that you have seasonal rounds that, with the seasons, certain things come and go, right? And it's a cyclical pattern. It repeats every year. And then you can even, see larger patterns across years that happen, every 10 years or every 100 years, right? Still cyclical. Now, linear. Starting point and keeps going. All right, it's an infinite. However long time goes, there is time, and that tends to be what we tend to recognize and actually use in the West, right? Just because your clock your watch is in a circle doesn't mean that we're in cyclical time. In fact, because we have dating, it just adds. You get a day, a day, a day, a day, and those days keep adding and adding and adding infinitely into the future. All right. So, cyclical versus linear time should be pretty straightforward. Now, how about relative chronology? Now, this is all about the relationships between sites and cultures, or features within a site. Our text actually gives a pretty funny example about, was it feline chronology in events? It's pretty good. I giggled when I read it. Now, we also have absolute chronology, and this is specific years, date X, from date A to date B. Absolute. Here is the limit. Dink, dink. You get the idea. Touch back on stratigraphy and relative chronology, all based on the principle of superposition. Without superposition, we would just kind of be up a creek. It is so fundamental to archaeology, cultural resource management, and it's the basic concept that, the new stuff gets put on top. And, anything down there gets stuck down there. Now, there are exceptions. You can have various means of disturbance. Classic one that I deal with out here is, farmer plows their field and plows right through a prehistoric archaeological site. Brings all the artifacts up. That's classic disturbance, right? Or, hey, maybe they're building a house and they dig on down and all of a sudden, what, we're hitting all these strange rocks. Did maybe somebody built a house here before? Hey, it happens. The concept of superposition should be well understood, well grasped by now. So I'm not going to go off on it, but I will draw your attention to. There's a diagram of a cave that's got a great series of surfaces and occupations, and I think the phrase our book uses is a chronological jigsaw puzzle, and I really like that metaphor. It does a really nice job of trying to whoa, so we got all these different layers, and some are intruding into others, and what happened? How did that happen? That's the fun stuff. And you can spend years, literally, write your entire dissertation just on one cave site with that sort of occupation. Actually, probably 20 archaeologists could write their dissertation on that one cave site with that occupation. But I digress. Looking on here, my notes. Artifacts and relative chronology. This is important stuff. Now, I hate to use the word evolution in non-biological terms because, hey, there's a big old part of me that's a biological anthropologist, and we only use that word when we're talking about biological processes. But I'm going to use it in, a non-scientific way here. Think of, the artifacts and relative chronology as the evolution of things. Okay? Tools. We start with simple, basic tools. Tools get more efficient, improved. They may become more refined, and you can see that through time. Okay? Now, it just so happens that I have some boxes. I have... Everyone's like, what's in the box? What's in the box? Yeah. I brought show and tell. I figure if I'm going to talk about this stuff, I need to show you something. So, okay, I'm going to show you a really ugly projectile point. Beefy, chunky, unrefined. Okay? Now, let's compare that to... Oh, okay, let's look at another beefy, chunky one before we move on. It's got a hinge fracture. It's missing its point. This is a Guilford lancelet out of the Carolina area that is napped out of quartz. How crazy cool is that? Nasty material. Not very predictive. Oh, okay. So those are some pretty ugly, fugly, all right, points. Now, let's look at some nice points. Okay, nice ears, nice notching. All right, this happened well after this. Okay, big, chunky, ugly, not very efficient. Much more efficient. Here's one of my prize points. I actually found this when I was a kid in Kansas. I stepped on it. I broke the very little tip off. You can see it better on that side. But yeah, this is a beautiful point at a chert. Yeah, anyway, that should kind of make my point clear that we go from simple chunky to more refined. And here, I got another example of more refined. Check that out. That's an awl. All right, it's a leather punch. Super worked. All right, full bifacing, the works. Here's another one, and this one's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to try to hold it up here to the camera. It has serration. You see those little notches in it? All right, that is pretty modern in the terms of things. So yeah, this is relative dating. Okay, yeah, it's important. And you can actually develop an entire sequence, a diagnostic sequence for any particular type of artifact, right? Like here we got some potsherds. Potsherds, that's what we call them. Chunks of prehistoric pottery. Let's see if you can see that. That's the exterior. Interior. Interior is burnished, right? Exterior is got actually a woven imprint on it. And we also look at the cross section. You see the firing? Pretty cool. And if you had a lens, you could actually look at this and see the types of particles that are used in the grist. Is it fine grist, coarse grist, etc., etc.? And those sorts of things will tell you how old this is. Right? Pretty cool. Oh, here's a good one with a good imprint. Let's see if I can get it up to the camera. There you go. Should be able to see the imprinting on it. And this is out of the Carolinas. All right. Enough of relative sequencing. Note that James Dietz did the super awesome analysis of tombstones in New England. Just as tools may change, so does the things that we make with tools, right? So the products, not just the tools themselves, but the things that we produce, those change through time as well. And we can understand shifts in taste, right? The James Dietz tombstones, classic example. We see a shift in these colonial tombstones from having death's heads to having cherubs, angels, to having wheat. It just shifts through time. And the way that he did it is what's really amazing. Like, he did a full statistical plot. And we're like, oh, and here we have this trend, and then it shifts to this trend. Awesome. That's what it's all about. And that would be a great example of frequency seriation. Buzzword. Okay, moving on. What else I got here? Yes, historical documents. Yeah, these are really important for us. I mean, like, we look at the stuff prior to writing, but we also look at the writing, right? It helps us. I mean, like, people have been writing for, 3,300 years or so? Ancient Sumerian? It is kind of, obviously ancient Sumerian ain't going to help you when it comes to dealing with a Paleolithic site in the New World, but right, we do have means of dating through written documents, right? Go figure. Lots of times people like to date them. It's not a bad strategy, right? Because there might be somebody in the future just like us that's like, oh, hey, when was this done? Even cooler is sometimes you can see where those dates have been messed with. There are sites in Central and South America, Mayan sites in the Yucatan, where you can see where someone has come in, maybe 100 years after when some stela was erected or something, and they changed the date on it. Right? Like, it's doctoring a document, which I find hysterical. Like, archaeologists live for that sort of stuff because we can see it as plain as I see my hand right here. Okay. Of course, yes, you also have objects themselves, right? Physical objects. I showed you the pottery. You can also have cross dating. You can find in the mix of your stuff. Oh, hold on. I'm looking for a chunk. Here's some. Here is some soft paste porcelain, okay, found in the middle of a contact period site in North Carolina. Okay, you can look at its profile. You can test it. It's hard paste. You take your fingernail and you rub it on the cross section, and if you can scratch it, it's soft paste. If you can't, it's hard paste. And this is an import good. These came from China, all right? The European settlers were eating this stuff up. Like, it was the trend, if you would, back in the day, right? So, it was easily consumable and disposable. You just bought new plates. Some of them had elaborate printing on them, hand painting, transfer prints, the works. And those are also things that you can use to relatively date your object. Here's another piece. This would be at the lip. It's kind of a cool fragment. Okay, enough about that. Tree rings. Oh yeah. Dendrochronology, super cool. What I think blows my mind the most is that you can take samples from multiple trees in the area from different time periods and still build a complete chronology. Because you can see the events that affected one tree affected another tree, and that allows you to find the point of overlap. It's amazing. I mean, like, cool. Other types, we got radiocarbon dating. That's good for about, let me back up. Dendrochronology, do you about 10,000 years or so. Radiocarbon, 50,000 years to about 1500 AD. Potassium argon dating, this is the old stuff, like billions of years to about 50,000 years ago. I mean, not much, but pretty much the earliest to pretty recent. Yeah, obsidian hydration. You got to take a moment for this. Of course, I don't have a. Oh, here's a piece of obsidian. So, whenever you whack this, you expose it to the air. And in the air, you have water molecules. And those, even though you can't see it, they're tiny little fissures in this that if you have an electron microscope, you can see. But if you don't, you just got to believe me. And those fissures absorb H2O, water, at a set rate. That allows us to date when something was fractured out of obsidian. Pretty darn cool. And I did some source work on obsidian from Glass Butte in Central Oregon, which is one of the most premier obsidian sites in the Pacific Northwest. Oh, thermoluminescence, pretty crazy cool stuff. You can, excuse me, lots of malleable materials like clay, brick, ceramic. They have various ferrous particles in them, and when they get fired, they realign, and you can use thermoluminescence to see that. It's pretty cool. You can also use things like magnetometers, which it's a glorified metal detector, super sensitive metal detector, and it'll pick up the realigned ferrous molecules and bricks that have been fired, because as soon as you fire it, all those ferrous particles realign, and it stands out like a sore thumb when you're doing remote sensing. Let's see here. We got electronic spin resonance. We got uranium testing, fission track, archaeomagnetic magnetometers, metal detectors. Those are those ferrous particles. Yeah, I'll let you read about those in details because I got a whole chapter I have to go over here. Yeah. Let me put my things away real quick. None of these are significant. Okay. Here's a really pretty one. That's out of agate. It's a little. You think of it as a prehistoric X-Acto knife. Pretty sweet. It was a point that got remade into a sharp little knife. All right, chapter 7. Recovering the data. Haha. So, this is all about finding the stuff. And, there's some pretty easy stuff to find, like, I don't know, a Grand Pyramid of Giza. It's, like, oh, sorry, what's that in my way? Big old pyramid. The point is you got conspicuous stuff. You got stuff that you can readily see. Or, everyone knows that it's there, right? They're just like, oh yeah, no, go look over there. Things like the pyramids, the Roman Colosseum, can't get away from it. Calapooia, what's it called? Calapooia is a Native American group. The Mississippian Hopewell mound builders, right? Like, biggest structures in the New World, huge, right? And you don't have to be an expert to be like, why is this hill in the middle of this river valley when there's no other hills? Okay, Cahokia. That was the word I was looking for. First, there's the obvious stuff, but then there's the not obvious, the things that we get paid to do, right? And this really, you learn a lot more about this when you do a field school. All right, I got to be really clear about that. I can only give it so much So much attention here. Excuse me, I have a wicked dry throat. One of those tickles right back there that just kind of makes your eyes water. Hold on. Oh, mercy. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little story. Got another box. Ooh. When I was a kid, I was born in Kansas. Oof. No offense, Kansas. But my folks were from the Washington side of the Columbia River Gorge. And they used to hang out in Oregon when they were high school sweethearts and stuff. So when I was a kid, we would drive from Lawrence, Kansas, all the way out to Yachats, Oregon. Like clockwork. Spend two weeks out there, minimum, every summer. And guess where I fell in love with archaeology? Oh, Yachats, Oregon. Because as a kid, I was walking along the beach, and I saw this weird, there's like a bluff, all right, that's been eroded out. And I see this weird, big, white stain, all right? And I go take a closer look, and it's full of shells. And not only that, there's more than shells in there. There are bones. Bones! All sorts of bones. All right? And as a kid, I'm like, wow, what is this? I got a whole pile of shells and bones. Well, it's called a midden pit. And it's pretty much a prehistoric trash pit. It's where people used to throw their crap out. Excuse me. And people's garbage can tell us an awful lot about them. Guarantee you guys probably can't identify this. This is a sea lion bone. People were eating sea lions. Stellar sea lions at that. We got a deer scapula fractured. We got most likely a deer rib. Yeah, all sorts of cool stuff, including even fossilized shark poop. Yeah, crazy cool. Here's a prehistoric salmon operculum. The gill flap, they're bony in salmon. Salmon vertebrae. Hold that up to the camera so you can see it. Yeah, pretty wicked cool stuff. Here's another operculum. That's kind of what I do. I specialize in the faunal analysis of things. Here, also, out of the same... That's a chitin. It's kind of like a limpet, but not. It's got a hinged shell, and you can think of it as prehistoric escargot. Anyway, all of those were from when I was a kid. Didn't know any better, didn't know that I was disturbing things, but as you can tell, I've kept them, and in good condition, for 40 plus years. So yeah, you can date things relative to how you find them. Middens, trash dumps, you throw the trash on top, right? So the older stuff's at the bottom, superposition. You can see tells, ruins. You can read the cultural landscape. This is something that I love to do, right? Like, you can see where the floodplains are, and when you have certain confluences of rivers, and then an elevated bench, that's going to be a prime site for settlement. Right? Reading the topography, the geography, the landscape itself, seeing shifts in vegetation, like, what is this ivy doing here? It's not indigenous to North America. No, it was introduced. It's an ornamental. Maybe something happened here. Sorry for the sniffling. I'm having a horrible allergic reaction to something. Probably all these old things that I pulled out. Excuse me. Yeah, and of course, you can look at soil itself. You can see alluvial soils or aeolian soils. It's all spread out before us like an open textbook. That's one of the reasons I love archaeology. Can't get enough of it. Anyway, so how do we go about finding this stuff? Well, in the real world, it takes a lot of practice. Typically, I'm going to speak from the contract side of things, cultural resource management. You get somebody that wants a chunk of land surveyed. They want to do a cultural resource assessment for it. Before I even go set foot on the chunk of land, I'm going to go do all the background research that I can. That means I'm going to spend days in state archives pulling up all the old plats, when that chunk of land was marked and sold, who it was sold to, all subsequent transitions of ownership of it. Any and all structures and known sites in the vicinity up to a 5-mile radius, right? That's all the prelim work. Then, if there's nothing, I might not even go set foot on the land. That's pretty rare, though. Most times I even, I have to do at least a preliminary walkover. So chances are I do, if I do a preliminary workup, background research, all that, and there's nothing in the area, I might go walk over it just to make sure. Done deal. All right. Now, step up from that. A little more complicated. There's a bunch of stuff in the area, right? Oh yeah, there's a known habitation site over there, and there's a couple more over there, and we definitely got a whole bunch of different land parcels that have been bought and sold for 300 years. You're going to be spending a lot more time building up the background material, background research, and when you go out, you got to find it all. All right, so if you know that there's a structure that's supposed to be over there, you need to be able to go identify that. Use combinations of maps, GPS, ArcView. If you know it's supposed to be there, you need to go identify it. And there's also the extra benefit that you do site monitoring. So like if it's already a recognized site, it's already been recorded, when you go and find it again, you make note of its condition, right? And the person that saw it prior to you also made those notes. So you can get a record of site condition through time. Important thing. Oh my goodness, my nose is dripping like a sieve. So all that would be kind of phase one, all right? What we call phase one survey, a pedestrian survey. And if you found stuff, all right, you might progress to phase two, which is a bit more of a little more poking around. You might put in a couple of test pits. Like you have one of those beautiful setups of, a tier 3 river and a tier 2 river coming together in a nice confluence with elevated floodplain that overlooks it. That's prime habitation site. You would then go put in a series of test pits, test holes. You could do them completely randomly. However, I don't tend to work that way. I always tend to set things up on a north, south, east, west axis, right? And be like, okay, let's run a line of test holes every 50 meters for, a quarter mile here. And you'll try to run right through it. And when you're going through the materials of the test pits, it might play out. It might be like, so the first test site, which is outside, nothing. Then you're on the edge, a little something. Then in the middle, a whole lot of something. Then, it starts getting less and less and less. Helps you refine. Then you might come in and do an axis to it. All right? Like that. So it'll help you literally create a grid. Again, all these things are things that you learn in field school. Then, if it's pretty significant, and it takes a lot to be significant, because we don't like to dig it unless it's going to be destroyed. For the most part, if it's significant, we want to leave it. We'll use remote sensing technology, ground penetrating radar, resistivity meters, magnetometers, Landsat, LiDAR, you name it. and we'll use that to document because it'll help conserve the site itself. Now, there's always the case that, oh, nope, we got to put in this brand new cell tower, or got to put in this off ramp for the new highway. Well, eminent domain. The state and Fed can do it, and it means it's going to be lost. So that's actually one of the rare chances that you get to do a full phase 3 site mitigation, which is save as much of it and record it as possible. It's going to be destroyed. You are the last hope that information, that data, that archaeological material is going to have any significance. Okay? And that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. So, yeah, kind of a quick run through. Excuse me. It goes without saying, you map out everything. You document everything. Photos, ArcView maps, GPS. Yes, cross your I's, dot your T's. It's all gotta be done correctly. And unfortunately, this video doesn't give me the space to do that. I would have to have you all out in the field to try to walk you through this. But hopefully, I've given you enough insight that you can be like, oh, hey, no, I get the gist here, and we can deal with these things. I'm only 10 minutes over my time limit that I gave myself, so I'm going to say ciao. See you in the discussion boards. Later.